open source standard for creating containers. Each container in LXC is a little more involved than just a standard lightweight application container, but not quite as heavy as a full virtual machine. Placing it somewhere in the middle, LXC containers include their own bare bones operating system that interfaces with the host system hardware directly without requiring a host operating system. Because LXC containers include their own mini operating system, they are sometimes referred to as virtual machines, although that term isn't quite correct as LXC containers still require a host operating system to operate. Software packaging. Software packaging has some troublesome issues. As an example, there are several packages and libraries needed called dependencies to make PostgreSQL, covered in Chapter 21, Managing Database Servers, fully functional. So when you install the PostgreSQL using apt or the PostgreSQL-server package using DNF, the needed dependencies are installed too. If a dependency is not available or the wrong version of it is installed, your database may not function correctly or securely. In addition, when the database server is set up and run, it is not fully isolated from the other software and services on the system. At some point in time, software package developer, sometimes called publishers, realized that system administrators and app developers were having all the fun with containers. It became apparent that software could be delivered and implemented on Linux systems in their own container-like environment. As a result, package developers began exploring this brave new world of software distribution. Using a container-like package system resolves many of the problems in our PostgreSQL example. A compressed software package holds all the needed dependencies and each is the correct version. These packages are installed and run in a protected sandbox, making them unavailable to adversely affect other software and services on the system. This includes newer versions of the software package itself, so you could run two versions of PostgreSQL on the same system. In this section, we take a look at two container-like package formats, more appropriately called universal package systems. One is Snap and the other is Flatpak. Looking at Ubuntu Snap, Canonical, keepers of the Ubuntu distribution, introduced a new package system around 2015. However, it was released to the world in a limited form focused on only cloud-based applications and available only on the Ubuntu distribution. Over time, this package format called Snap became so popular that it was made available to other major Linux distributions, including Red Hat. Snap is now used not only for cloud-based applications, but also for desktop, server, and Internet of Things apps. Exploring the Snap package system. The Snap package system consists of many different components in its framework. The following parts are important for system administrators: Snap packages. Software packages in the Snap format are called snaps and focus on a single software application. For example, you could install the multipass orchestration snap on your system. The snaps download as a single self-contained compressed package file that holds all the binaries and dependencies needed for the app to work. Snaps are distribution independent. In other words, they don't require any modification for their apps to run on a different Linux distribution than the one for which they were originally packaged. This simplifies application version testing for the system administrator and package building for the package managers. However, keep in mind not all Linux distributions support Snap. A popular aspect of Snap concerns heightened security. When you run an app installed from a Snap package, it operates in a sandbox. This way, it is isolated from other data and applications on a Linux system, including other running apps. Snap channels. A common problem with managing system applications is maintaining an older version of the app. There could be additional products or hardware that need to be upgraded prior to the installation of the latest and greatest software version. Sometimes your customers may refuse to sanction an application upgrade. Whatever the reason, a Snap channel can help. Snap channels are Snap delivery pathways. Your Snap package is updated using a set channel, though you can switch channels if desired. These quotas, these are limits assigned to each user. These limits can be implemented with a warning to users when they are filling their allocated space so they can delete some data or take some action that keeps them within their limits. In the figure, all users are being given 100 millibytes of space and will be warned when they get 50 millibytes. Compression. Another tactic you can use to better utilize the space you have is to compress files that are used infrequently. This can be done in Windows at both the file and the folder levels. In the advanced attributes of the file or folder properties, select Compress Contents to save disk space as shown in figure 2.10. Be aware that when you do this to files and folders that are frequently accessed, you will place a load on the CPU of the server because it decompresses the file to make it available and then compresses it again when saved. The duplication. In many cases, data is located multiple times on the same drive. This process can be done after the data is on the drive, or it can be implemented inline, which means data being written to the drive is examined first to see if it already exists on the drive. Monitoring. Uptime. Uptime is the description of the ratio of time a system spends up and running as opposed to offline and available. Generally speaking, increasing the number of nines involves spending money to provide the resources necessary to deliver that uptime. Thresholds. These alerts are designed to allow technicians to react to a system performance issue before it impacts the business. Performance. When discussing the performance of system resources such as memory and CPU, you need to know the major metrics that are used to assess performance of each resource. Memory. Different server roles place different demands on the memory, so there may be specific metrics called counters in Windows of interest you can learn about by consulting the vendor documentation. Memory. Percentage committed bytes in use, the amount of virtual memory in use. If this over 80%, you need more memory. Disk. On several of the server roles we discussed, disk was the critical resource. When monitoring the disk subsystem, you must consider two issues: the speed with which the disk is being accessed and the capacity you have available. Let's examine those metrics in more detail. Input or output operations per second. This input or output operations per second represents the number of reads and writes that can be done in 1 second. One of the advantages of newer solid-state drives is that they exhibit much higher IOPS values than traditional hard disk drives. Capacity versus utilization. The second metric of interest when designing a storage solution is capacity. When planning and managing storage capacity, consider the following questions. For example, if data is located on a RAID 1 or mirror drive, you need twice as much space for data. As the number of drives in the array go up, the amount of space required for the parity information goes down as percentage of the space in the drive. How fast are the needs growing? Remember that your needs are not static, they are changing at all times and probably growing. You can calculate this growth rate manually or you can use capacity planning tools. Are there major expansions on the table? Network. As you learned, the NIC can become a bottleneck in the system if it cannot keep up with the traffic. Here are some common counters monitored by server administrators. Network interface. If this value is more than 70% of the bandwidth of the interface is saturated or not keeping up. Databases from the beginning. Every story must begin somewhere. Databases are no different. The grouping of data into logical constructs first appeared in technical articles in 1960, written by Bachman. As he explained, a database management system, DBMS, describes how data can be gathered, guided, and protected. Before that, persistence layers for applications usually were represented by flat file databases on mainframes. Back then, the most popular flat file types were the Index Sequential Access Method, ISAM, and Virtual Storage Access Method, VSAM. Flat file databases, however, have several disadvantages. They cannot link data from one file into another, so this task is the responsibility of the software developer. This task includes opening each file, accessing the data in each file by coding data access paths, and loading the dataset of interest in a volatile memory. Flat file databases are fixed form files, so any change to their structure creates a huge effort for the developers because of the absence of an abstraction layer between the software and its data. All programs consuming the modified flat file need to be updated to avoid the wrong data being pulled into memory and the corruption of the data residing in the flat file. Data redundancy was achieved by replicating it in multiple flat files, but the problem was maintaining consistency between the copies. DBMS were developed to address this need and improve the overall functionality of all sorts of applications. DBMS were more expensive than flat files. They demanded more specialized professionals, and at that time, most companies needed to invest in the professional development of their workforce. The costs of licensing, infrastructure, and personnel imposed a barrier on the initial adoption of DBMS. But, as with any new and improved technology, the benefits of database systems outweigh older flat file solutions, increasing adoption drastically. 1960s, Bachman's job paved the way for the creation of the Codacil data model created by a consortium of companies to develop data processing capabilities for COBOL. This data model introduced the concept of DDL, Data Definition Language, and DML, Data Manipulation Language. File management systems flourished, enabling easier ways to access data at rest. IBM developed the Database Management Systems ICS, later renamed IMS. IMS was responsible for the persistent layer of the Apollo project and was directly involved in the Apollo 11 mission's computerized systems. The Sabra system, developed by IBM and American Airlines, allowed user access to data over the network, enabling American Airlines to automate reservation booking. It was first in the industry to achieve such automation. 1970s, database technologies experienced rapid growth. E. F. Codd's relational database model introduced the core concepts of database theory, including the entity relation model in 1976. Codd presented key definitions still in use until today, such as tables, columns, primary keys, and foreign keys. According to Codd, a table is a representation of a relation, for example, products, users, offices, and departments, and each relation is composed of several data domains as columns. For example, a relation of offices consists of the following data domains: address, available space, available facilities, and number of employees. Each data domain in this example has its own numeric relation. For example, available space should be a number representing the area in a specific metric system. Summary: Web APIs are HTTP-based services that any software application can use to access and possibly manipulate data. Web APIs are designed to work by using common communication standards, protocols, given sets of available operations, specifications, and data exchange formats, JSON, XML, and the like. Web APIs are commonly split among four possible scopes of use: public or open, when anyone has or can acquire access; partner, when access is restricted to business associates; internal or private, when access is limited to the organization's network; composite, when they orchestrate multiple public, partner, or internal API calls. To fulfill their role, web APIs require a uniform set of rules, constraints, and formats that depend on the chosen architectural style or messaging protocol. The most used standards nowadays are REST, SOAP, gRPC, and GraphQL, each of which has distinctive characteristics, trade-offs, and supported formats. This book focuses mostly on REST, but Chapter 10 is dedicated to GraphQL. ASP.NET Core is the high-performance cross-platform open-source web development framework that we will use to design and develop web APIs throughout this book. ASP.NET Core's modern architectural principles allow developers to build lightweight, highly modular apps with a great level of testability and maintainability. ASP.NET Core architecture allows developers to customize the app capabilities and workloads by using discrete and reusable components to perform specific tasks. These components fall into two main categories, both of which are registered and configured in the app's entry point, the program.cs file. Services required to provide functionalities and instantiated through dependency injection. Middleware responsible for handling the HTTP request pipeline. ASP.NET Core supports two paradigms for building web APIs: controllers, which offer great versatility and a full set of supported features, and minimal APIs, a simplified approach that allows us to write less code while reducing overhead. The minimal API approach, introduced in .NET 6, can be a great way to build simple web APIs in a time-efficient fashion and is great for developers who are looking for a sleek, modern programming approach. ASP.NET Core web apps can overcome most performance problems due to resource-intensive, thread blocking calls by using top, an asynchronous programming model that allows the main thread to start tasks in a non-blocking way and resume execution upon their completion. Web APIs at a glance. Almost all applications need data, especially web-based applications, in which large numbers of clients interact with a centralized entity, typically an HTTP-based service to access information and possibly update or manipulate them. In this book, we learn how to design and develop a specific type of HTTP-based service that has the sole purpose of providing data to these clients, allowing them to interact with the information they require in a uniform, structured, and standardized way, a web API. In the first section of this chapter, we'll see the distinctive characteristics of a web API and learn how it can be applied to several real-world scenarios. Web APIs. An application programming interface is a type of software interface that exposes tools and services that computer programs use to interact with each other and exchange information. The connection required to perform such exchanges is established by means of common communication standards or protocols, given sets of available operations, specifications, and data exchange formats, JSON, XML, and the like. From that definition, we can easily see that the main purpose of an API is to allow parties to communicate by using a common syntax or abstraction that simplifies and standardizes what happens under each hood. The overall concept is similar to that of real-world interfaces, which also provide a common syntax to allow different parties to operate. A perfect example is the plug socket, an abstraction used by all national electrical systems to allow household appliances and electronic devices to interact with the power supply through given voltage, frequency, and plug type standards. Figure 1.1 shows the main components that form an electrical grid, an interconnected network for generating, transmitting, and delivering electricity from producers to residential consumers. As we can see, each component handles electricity in a different way and communicates with the others by using various protocols and adapters, cable lines, transformers, and so on, with the ultimate goal of bringing it to people's houses. When the residential units are connected to the grids, the electricity can be used by home appliances, TV sets, ovens, refrigerators, and so on. Through a secure, protected, easy to use interface, the AC power plug. If we think about these sockets work, we can easily understand how much they simplify the technical aspects of the underlying power grid. Home appliances don't have to know how such a system works as long as they can deal with the interface. A web API is the same concept brought to the World Wide Web. An interface accessible through the web that exposes one or more plugs, the endpoints, which other parties, the clients, can use to interact with the power supply, the data, by using common communication protocols, HTTP, and standards JSON or XML formats. Throughout this book, the term Web API will be used interchangeably to mean both the interface and the actual web application. Figure 1.2 illustrates the purpose of a web API within a typical service-oriented architecture environment. SOA is an architectural style built around the separation of responsibility of various independent services that communicate over network. As we can see, the Web API plays a key role because it is responsible for retrieving the data from the underlying database management system and making it available to the services. Web App 1, such as React Informative Website, which fetches data from the Web API to display it to end users through HTML pages and components. Mobile App 1, such as Android app, and Mobile App 2, which can be the iOS port of the same app, which also fetches data and show them to end users through their native user interfaces. Web App 2, such as a PHP management website, which accesses the Web API to allow administrators to interact with and possibly modify the data. Cloud Service 1, such as a data warehouse, which periodically pulls data from the Web API to feed its internal repository to persist some access logs, for example. Cloud Service 2, such as machine learning software, which periodically retrieves some test data from the Web API and uses it to perform predictions and provide useful insights. What we've just described is an interesting scenario that can help us understand the role of Web API within a rather common service-based ecosystem. But we're still discussing an impersonal, theoretical approach. Let's see how we can adopt the same architecture to a specific real-world scenario. Real-world example. In this section, we instantiate the abstract concept depicted in Figure 1.1 into a concrete, credible, and realistic scenario. Everyone knows what a board game is, right? We're talking about tabletop games with dice, cards, and playing pieces, and stuff like that. Suppose that we work in the IT department of a board gaming club. The club has a database of board games that includes gaming info such as name, publication year, minimum to max players, playtime, minimum age, complexity and mechanics, as well as some ranking stats, number of ratings and average rating, given by club members, guests, and other players over time. Let's also assume that the club wants to use this database to feed some web-based services and applications, such as the following. An end-user website, accessible to everyone, to showcase the board games and their ratings, as well as provide some additional features to registered users, such as ability to create lists. A mobile app, also publicly accessible with the same features as the website, and an optimized UI or UX user experience interface for smartphones and tablets. A management portal, available to a restricted list of authorized users that allows those users to perform, create, read, update, and delete or CRUD operations in the database and carry out other administration-based tasks. A data analysis service hosted on a third-party platform. As we can easily guess, a great way to fulfill such requirements would be to implement a dedicated Web API. This approach allows us to feed all these services without exposing the database server and its underlying data model to any of them. Figure 1.3. Several board game related web applications and services fed by a single MyGList Web API. Again, the Web API is the playmaker, fetching the data source containing all the relevant MyBGList DBMS and making it available to other services. MyBGList website, a React.js website entirely hosted on a content delivery network following the Jamstack approach, where users can browse the board game catalog and add games to a set of predefined lists, own, want to try, want to buy, and so on, as well as add their own custom lists. MyBGList mobile app, a React Native app available for Android and iOS that allow users to perform the same actions that are available on the MyBGList website, browse and add to lists. MyBGList Management Portal, an ASP.NET web applications hosted on a dedicated virtual machine server within a secure private cloud that system administrators can access to add, update, and delete board games as well as perform maintenance-based tasks. My BGList Insights, a software as a service that periodically pulls data from the web API to feed its internal repository and to perform logging, monitoring, and performance analysis and business intelligence tasks. This web API is the one we'll be working with throughout the following chapters. Type of web APIs. Now that we know the general picture, we can spend some time exploring the various architectures and messaging protocols available to web API developers nowadays. As we'll be able to see, each type has characteristics, pros, and cons that make it suitable for different applications and businesses. Before looking at various architectures, let's briefly summarize the four main scope of use in which each web API commonly falls. Public APIs. Public APIs are also called open APIs, not to be confused with the Open API specification. As the name suggests, this term refers to APIs that are meant to be available for use by any third party, often without access limitations. These APIs typically involve no authentication and authorization if they're free to use, or they employ a key or token authentication mechanism if they need to identify the caller for various reasons, such as applying per call costs. Furthermore, because their endpoints are usually accessible from the World Wide Web, public APIs often use various throttling, queuing, and security techniques to avoid being crippled by a massive number of simultaneous requests as well denial of service attacks. Partner APIs. The APIs that fall into this category are meant to be available only to specifically selected and authorized partners such as external developers, system integrator companies, whitelisted external internet protocols, and the like. Partner APIs are used mostly to facilitate business-to-business activities. An example would be an e-commerce website that wants to share its customers' data with a third-party business partner that needs to feed its own customer relationship management and marketing automation systems. These APIs typically implement strong authentication mechanisms and IP restriction techniques to prevent them from being accessed by unauthorized users. They're definitely not meant to be consumed by end users or public clients such as standard websites. Internal APIs, also known as private APIs. These APIs are meant for internal use only, such as to connect different services owned by the same organization, and are often hosted within the same virtual private network, web farm, or private cloud. An internal API, for example, can be used by the internal enterprise resource planning software to retrieve data from various internet business sources, payroll, asset management, project management, procurement, and so on, as well as create high-level reports and data visualizations. Because these APIs are not exposed to the outside, they often implement mild authentication techniques depending on the organization's internal security model and its performance and load balancing tweaks. Composite APIs, sometimes referred to as API gateways. These APIs combine multiple APIs to execute a sequence of related or interdependent operations with a single call. In a nutshell, they allow developers to access several endpoints at the same time. Such an approach is used mostly in microservice architecture patterns, in which executing a complex task can require the completion of a chain of subtasks handled by several services in a synchronous or asynchronous way. A composite API acts mostly as an API orchestrator, ensuring that the various subtasks required to perform the main call are successful and capable of returning a valid result, or invalidating the whole process if they aren't. A common use scenario ensures that multiple third-party services fulfill their respective jobs, such as when we need to delete a user record and all its personal info permanently in our internal database and in several external data sources without creating atomicity problems, such as leaving potentially sensitive data somewhere, because the orchestrated calls can be of multiple types. Public, partner, or internal composite APIs often end up being hybrids, which is why they're generally considered to represent a different API type. Configuring network settings. For servers, it's a necessity to have your Linux system connected to some type of network, whether it's the need to share files and printers on a local network or serve web pages on the internet. Your Linux server will most likely require some type of network connection. In this chapter, you will learn to find and examine the network configuration files for your server, view and change network configuration settings using command line tools, troubleshoot common network problems. Network settings. When you first installed your Linux server software, you were required to specify the network settings for your server to operate in network environment. Most Linux workstation setups can use the dynamic host configuration protocol, which allows the workstation to request network information from a DHCP server on the network automatically. You don't have to configure anything. Unfortunately, Linux servers are a bit different since clients must know exactly where to find the server on the network. Linux servers should have a static IP address assigned. While that's possible to do via DHCP, depending on your network, it's also possible that you'll need to set the static IP address manually in the server configuration. That makes the job of configuring a Linux server for the network a little bit harder. There are 5 main pieces of information you need to configure for your Linux system to interact on a network: the host address, the network subnet address, the default router, sometimes called the gateway, the system hostname, a DNS server address for resolving hostnames. Unfortunately, different Linux distributions use different methods for storing the network information required for the system. The following sections walk through the standard network configurations for both Ubuntu and Red Hat servers. Ubuntu servers. If you choose to manually configure the network settings during the Ubuntu server installation, a form appears for you to select which network interface to configure, as you've previously installed in Ubuntu. When you select a specific interface and set it to manual settings, a new form appears for you to fill out. In this form, you'll need to specify the values for each of the network settings. The installation service then automatically sets these values in the appropriate network configuration files for you. However, if you ever need to change the network settings, it helps to know where to find that information. Since version 17.04 Ubuntu servers utilize the NetPlan tool to manage network settings for the server, the NetPlan tool doesn't actually handle network traffic itself. That job is left to systemd network D application. Instead, NetPlan just makes the job of configuring network settings easier and then passes that information onto the systemd-network D application. NetPlan uses a simple series of text-based configuration files located in the /etc/netplan directory to define all of the required network settings. These files use the YAML int markup language text format to define the network settings. There can be multiple files in the /etc/netplan directory, and each file definition builds off prior files in the directory in lexicographical order. This allows you to split multiple network settings into multiple files, making it easier to define settings for multiple network interfaces if necessary. Listing 12.1 shows a sample netplan configuration file for an Ubuntu server. In this example, the Ubuntu server has two network interface cards. The ENP0S3 interface uses DHCP to obtain dynamic IP address from a DHCP server on the network. The ENP0S8 interface uses a static IP address of 192.168.1.80 on the network. The /24 at the end of the address indicates the subnet mask is 255.255.2.5.0. The file also specifies the default gateway or router and the name server DNS server address. If you make any changes to the YAML files, you'll need to do either reboot the server for the changes to take effect or use the netplan command line tool to have netplan forward the changes to the systemd-networkd application by using the apply option. Netplan space apply. The netplan tool automatically informs the systemd-networkd application that settings have been changed so it can update information. Working with data files. When you have a large amount of data, it's often difficult to handle the information and make it useful. The Linux system provides several CLI tools to help you manage large amounts of data. This section covers the basic commands that every system administrator, as well as any everyday Linux user, should know how to use to make their lives easier. Sorting. Often, to understand the data within text files, you need to reformat file data in some way. The sort utility sorts a file's data. It makes no changes to the original file. It only reads the file, sorts its data, and displays the sorted data to stdout. If you want to order a file's content alphabetically, simply enter the sort command followed by the name of the file you want to sort. Nano alphabet key.txt, cut alphabet key.txt, sort alphabet key.txt. It's pretty simple. However, things aren't always as easy as they appear. Take a look at this example. Nano number key.txt, cut number key.txt, sort number key.txt. If you were expecting the numbers to sort in numerical order, you were disappointed. By default, the sort command interprets numbers as characters, producing a sorted output that you may not want. Add the N option to the command to sort the text based on their numerical values, if that's what you are seeking. Sort -n number key.txt. There are several useful sort parameters you can use depending on what kind of sort is needed. Table 8.4 Commonly used sort command options: single dash, letter B, double dash, ignore leading blanks, description, ignore leading blanks when sorting. D, dictionary order, considers only blanks and alphanumerical characters. Don't consider special characters. F, ignore case. By default, sort orders capitalize letters first. This parameter ignores case. G, general numeric sort. Use general numerical value to sort. Viewing sorted data is helpful, but What do you do if you want to keep that sorted data? STD out redirection can help here. Nano number key sci-fi.txt, cat number key sci-fi.txt. Sort -n -t code -k 2 number key sci-fi.txt greater than sorted sci-fi.txt. Cut sorted sci-fi.txt. Keeping sorted data is especially handy when you've used a complex sort like the previous one. Another useful function when dealing with text data is searching for it. We'll cover that topic next. Searching. You may need to locate a text file within the virtual directory structure or just search through a file or text. For text. Either way, Linux provides you lots of options to accomplish your task. Locating files. A simple utility to use in finding files quickly is the locate program. What makes it fast is that this command searches a database that is pre-filled with file names and their locations. Red Hat servers. When you select to configure network settings in Red Hat installation process, a dialog box appears showing you the available network interfaces. After you select an interface and click the configure button, a form appears allowing you to set the network configuration for that interface. Select the IPv4 settings tab at the top to set the necessary network information for the interface. The installation program saves the configuration settings you enter to one or more files in the /etc/sysconfig/network-scripts directory. Each network interface has its own file. Sample CentOS network interface configuration settings. Type equal Ethernet. Proxy underscore method equal none. Browser underscore only equal no. Boot proto equal none. Def route equal yes. IPv4 failure fatal equal no. IPv6 init equal yes. IPv6 underscore autoconf equal yes. IPv6 diffroute equal yes. IPv6 failure fatal equal no. Red Hat servers use the Network Manager tool to manage the network configurations and interfaces. If you make any changes to these files, you'll need to either reboot the server or restart the Network Manager service using the following command. Systemctl restart Network Manager. This forces the Network Manager program to read the network configuration files and start the appropriate interfaces you have defined. Using network command line tools. Since most Linux server environments don't use a graphical desktop, you'll need to become familiar with the Linux command line tools to change any of the network configuration settings after installation. There are quite a few different command line tools that you have at your disposal. This section covers the ones you're most likely to run into. Network Manager tools. While the Network Manager tool is most often used in graphical workstation environments, Red Hat servers utilize the command line tools that it provides. NMTUI provides a simple text-based menu tool. NMCLI provides a text-only command line tool. Both of these tools help guide you through the process of setting the required network information for your Linux system. The NMTUI tool displays a stripped-down version of the graphical tool where you can select a network interface and assign network properties to it, as shown in Figure 12.5. The NMCLI tool doesn't attempt to use any type of graphical capabilities. It just provides a command line interface where you can view and change the network settings. By default, the command displays the current network devices and their settings. The nmcli command uses command line options to allow you to set the network settings. Sample #nmcli /con /add /type /ethernet /con -name /ethl /if name enp0s3 ip4. This is a quick way to change network settings directly from the command line. Other tools. If your Linux distribution doesn't support one of the network manager tools such as Ubuntu servers, there are a few legacy command line tools that you can use. ETH with no space tool displays Ethernet settings for a network interface. ifconfig displays or sets the IP address and netmask values for a network interface. IP displays or sets the IP address, netmask, and router values for a network interface. IWconfig sets the SSID and encryption key for a wireless interface. Route sets the default router address. Bund binds two or more network cards together. The following sections take a closer look at each of these tools. Finding locate. Be aware that locate may not be installed by default on your Linux distribution. If you'd like to have it, the package name is locate, and you can use the instructions for installing software packages in Chapter 3. If your distro is Ubuntu or Ubuntu based, on Chapter 5. If you're using a Red Hat, for CentOS. To find a file with locate command, just enter locate followed by the file's name you want to find. If the file is on your system and you have permission to view it, the locate utility will display the file's directory path and name as demonstrated here on an Ubuntu distribution. Locate /bash_history. Another nice feature of locate is that it uses a pattern to find files. This allows you to employ partial file names and regular expressions. And with the command options, ignore case. Table shows a few of the more commonly used locate command options. Short, first column, letter A. Long, second column, all. Description, third column. Display only file names that match all the patterns instead of displaying files that match only one pattern in the pattern list. B. Base name. Display only file names that match the pattern and do not include any directory names that match the pattern. C. Count. Display only the number of files whose name matches the pattern instead of displaying file names. I. Ignore case. Ignore case in the pattern for matching file names. Q. Quiet. Do not display any error messages such as permission denied when processing. R. Reg XP, capital R. Use the regular expression R instead of the pattern list to match file names. Where you can run into problems with locate is when a file is newly created. Here's an example of using the touch command to create a file and then it tries to find it with the local utility. Touch new file.txt, ls new file.txt, locate new file.txt. When a file is newly created, often it is not yet listed in the locate database. Typically, this database is updated only periodically. Also, When you have a newly installed Linux system, the database may not even yet exist. To fix both of these issues, you'll need to obtain super user privileges and run the update db command. This will update the database named /var/lib/mlocate/mlocate.db or create and update it. That's much better. Now that database is updated, the newly created file can be found by the locate utility. The locate command is useful when you want to find files by their name, but it's not useful when you're trying to find a file based on its size or who owns it. This is where the find command can help. Finding files. The find command is flexible. It allows you to locate files based on data, such as who owns the file, when the file was last modified, permissions set on the file, and so on. Its command line format is a little different. Find space path, space option, space expression. The path argument is a starting point directory because you designate a starting point in a directory tree. And find will search through that directory and all its subdirectories recursively for the file or files you seek. You can use a single period to designate your present working directory as the starting point directory. The expression command argument and its preceding option control what type of filters are applied to the search, as well as any settings that may limit the search. Table shows more commonly used option and expression combinations. Column 1, option, cmin. Column 2, expression, n. Description, display names of files whose status changed n minutes ago. Option, empty. Expression, not applicable. Displays names of files that are empty and are a regular text file for a directory. GID, n. Display name of files whose group ID is equal to n. Group name, display name of files whose group is name. INUM, n. Display name of files whose inode number is equal to n. Name, pattern, display name of files whose name matches pattern. Many regular expression arguments may be used in the pattern and need to be enclosed in quotation marks to avoid unpredictable results. Replace name with iname to ignore case. Size, n. Display names of files whose size matches n. Suffixes can be used to make the size more human readable, such as G for gigabytes. One nice feature of Find is that it will display all the files in your present working directory and any subdirectories that have no data in them. Find space dot space dash empty. Unlike locate, you can quickly find files that were newly created without updating a database. Touch, another new file.txt. Find /home/sysadmin -name, another new file.txt. You can search for files whose status was recently changed, just such as when data has been added to the file. You can modify these find command searches at any location with the virtual directory system. However, you may want to use super user privileges to get accurate results and avoid an overload of permission denied messages. Both locate and find are useful for discovering a file's location or performing a basic file analysis. However, neither of these commands can search through and display a file's contents. We'll cover a utility that does offer that feature next. Searching for and through files. When you need a utility that lets you search for files that contain certain data, grep is the winner. The command line format for the grep command is as follows: grep options pattern file. In the following example, the text files we've used or created for this chapter are listed in a single column format via the ls space 1 space asterisk dot text command. Two of those files contain the word pi, but which ones? The grep command can easily determine the correct answer. In the preceding example, the pattern used with grep was pi, and then in the current directory, all the text files *text were searched. The grep command lists and search results by displaying each file's name that contained the pattern and then shows the entire text line that has the pattern. There are some nice options you can use in your grep searches. Table 8.7 shows some of the more commonly used grep utility options. The grep command's commonly used options: C, short, first column, C, long, second column, count, description, display a count of text file records that contain a pattern match, D, action, directories equal action. When a file is a directory, if action is set to read the directory as if it were a regular text file. If action is set to skip, ignore the directory, and if action is set to recurse, act as if the R, or recursive option was used. E, extended reg XP. Designate the pattern as an extended regular expression. I, ignore case. Ignore the case in the pattern as well as in any text file records. R, capital R, comma, small r, recursive. Search a directory's contents, and for any subdirectory within the original directory tree, consecutively search its contents as well, recursively. Small letter v, invert match. Display only text files records that do not contain a pattern match. When searching through larger sections of the virtual directory structure for files containing certain data, it's a good idea to employ the D space skip option so that grep doesn't complain at you when it encounters a directory file. Regular expressions. Instead of looking for a word using grep, you can conduct a search using a regular expression. A regular expression is a pattern template you define for a utility such as grep, which uses a pattern template to filter text. Basic regular expressions include characters such as a dot followed by an asterisk to represent multiple characters and a single dot to represent one character. They also may use brackets to represent multiple characters such as bracket A, comma E, comma I, comma O, comma U, bracket, or a range of characters such as A to Z, bracket A space Z. To find text file records that begin with particular characters, you can precede them with caret symbol. For finding text file records where particular characters at the record's end, succeed them with the $sign symbol. In addition to BREs, there are extended regular expressions, which have more complex pattern templates. When using grep with EREs, you must add the E option to the command. An ERE pattern example is word 1, vertical line word 2, which tells grep that if a text line contains either word 1 or word 2, display it. If you'd like a more in-depth look at regular expressions, our favorite resource is Linux Command Line and Shell Scripting Bible. You can conduct rather complex searches with grep by using regular expressions. The grep can even handle extended regular expressions if you use the E option. The grep E command is the more modern version of the egrep utility. The grep E command is the more modern version of the egrep utility. The two are functionally the same, but egrep is now deprecated. When a command is deprecated, this means that it may not be available in the future. So you should stop using it as soon as possible and start using its modern equal. Compressing. Linux contains several file compression utilities that allow you to easily compress large files into smaller files that take up less space. While this may sound great, it often leads to confusion and chaos when you're trying to determine which utility to use. The following popular utilities are available on Linux: gzip, bzip2, xz. The advantages and disadvantages of each of these data compression methods are explored in this section. gzip. The gzip utility was developed in 1992 as a replacement for the old compress program, achieving text-based file compression rates of 60 to 70%. gzip has long been a popular data compression utility. To compress a file, simply type in gzip followed by the file's name. The original file is replaced by a compressed version with a .gz file name extension. To reverse the operation, type in gunzip followed by the compressed file names. Archiving. Backing up files is often called archiving, especially in the Linux world. There are several programs you can employ for managing backups. Some of the more popular products are Amanda, Bakula, Bareos, Duplicity, and Backup PC. Yet often these GUI or web-based programs have command line utilities at their core, which include the following: CPIO, DD, rsync, tar. The tar command was originally used to write files to a tape device for archiving. However, it can also write the output to a file, which has become a popular way to archive data in Linux, and that's the command we'll focus on in this chapter. The tar command copies the selected files and stores them in a single file. This file is called a tar archive file. If this archive file is compressed using a data compression utility, the compressed archive file is called a tarball. The tar program has several useful options. Table describes the more commonly used ones for creating data backups. First column, short, C. Second column, long, create. Description: creates a tar archive file. The backup can be a full or incremental backup, depending upon other selected options. U. Update. Appends files to an existing tar archive file but only copies those files that were modified since the original archive file was created. G. Listed incremental. Creates an incremental or full archive based upon metadata stored in the provided file. Z. gzip. Compress a tar archive file into a tarball using gzip. J. bzip2. Compresses a tar archive file into a tarball using bzip2. J. xz. Compress a tar archive file into a tarball using xz. V. verbose. Displays each file's name as each file is processed. Notice that there are some compression options in Table 8.8. When you use a compression utility along with an archive and restore program for data backups, it is vital that you use a lossless compression method. A lossless compression is just as it sounds. No data is lost. The gzip, bzip2, and xz utilities provide lossless compression. Obviously, it is important not to lose data when doing backups. To create an archive using the tar utility, you have to add a few arguments for the options and the command. In the preceding example, three options are used. The C option creates the tar archive. The V option displays the file names as they are placed into the archive file. The F option designates the archive file name, which is archive.tar. So that's tar space dash cvf archive.tar n asterisk the text, which is the file we created earlier. Though not required, it is considered good form to use the .tar extension on tar archive files. The example command's last argument designates the files to copy into this archive. If you are backing up lots of files or large amounts of data, it's a good idea to employ a compression utility. This is easily accomplished by adding an additional switch to your tar command options. Here, gzip compression is used to create a tarball. There are a couple of things to note in this example. First, look at the tar. Removing leading messages. The tar utility strips off the first forward slash in file names so that they can be restored anywhere in the future. If that forward slash was left in there, the files would only go back to their original location in the virtual directory structure, which is not very flexible. The next thing to note in the preceding example is that the tarball file name has the .tar.gz file extension. It is considered good form to use the .tar extension and tack on an indicator showing the compression method that was used. However, you can shorten it to .tgz if desired. Whenever you create data backups, it is a good practice to verify them. Table provides some tar command options for viewing and verifying data backups. The tar commands commonly use archive verification options. Column 1 short, D, column 2 long, compare diff, description, compares a tar archive files members with external files and list the differences. T, list, displays a tar archive files contents. W, verify, verifies each file as the file is processed. This option cannot be used with the compression options. Backup verification can take several different forms. You might ensure that the desired files, sometimes called members, are included in your backup by using the V option on the tar command in order to watch the files being listed as they are included in the archive file. You can also verify that desired files are included in your backup after the fact. Use the T option to list a tarball or archive files contents. Table 8.10 lists some of the options that you can use with tar utility to restore data from a tar archive file or tarball. Several options used to create the backup, such as G, are also available when restoring data. First column short, X, second column long, extract, get. Description, third column, extract files from a tarball or archive file and place them in the current working directory. Z, gunzip, decompress files in a tarball using gunzip. J, banzip2, decompresses files in a tarball using banzip2. Extracting files from an archive or tarball is very simple using the tar utility. In the previous example, a new subdirectory extract is created. The tarball is moved to the new subdirectory and then the files are restored from the tarball. Notice that instead of putting the files in the top level of the new subdirectory, extract, they were instead placed in the var/log subdirectory. That's because tar removed the leading forward slash of the original files but kept the rest of the directory references. This is a rather useful feature of the tar utility. Configuring and maintaining server functions and features. Network interface or output queue length. The number of packets in the output queue. If this value is over 2, the NIC is not keeping with the workload. Central Processing Unit. Consult the vendor's documentation for information on those counters and what they mean to the performance of the service or application. Common counters monitored by server administrators include processor or processor time, the percentage of time the CPU spends executing a non-idle thread. This should not be over 85% on a sustained basis. Processor's user time represents the percentage of time the CPU spends in user mode, which means it is doing work for an application. If this value is higher than the baseline you captured during normal operation, the service or application is dominating the CPU. Processor or interrupt time, system or processor queue length, the number of threads, which are smaller pieces of an overall operation in the processor queue. If this value is over 2 times the number of CPUs, the server is not keeping up with the workloads. Event logs. Server create log files that record system events, both normal and abnormal. In this section, you'll learn about log management issues and how to ensure that event data is there when you need it. Configuration. You can control the behavior of log files in Windows in several ways. Even if you are using the logs, and you shouldn't allow them to slowly eat up all the space. First, you can limit the amount of space used for each log. Second, you can determine the behavior when the log is full. Third, you can choose to save a log for later viewing. To set the maximum size for a log file, access the properties of the log in Event Viewer. In the maximum log size option, use the spinner control to set the value you want and click OK. To determine what happens when the log is full, access the same dialog box shown in Figure 2.12 and select one of the 3 options. Overwrite events as needed. All these events first. Archive the log when full. Do not overwrite events. Do not overwrite events. Clear logs manually. This can also be done at the command line using the following. The R parameter specifies whether you want to retain the log, and the AB parameter specifies whether to automatically back up the log. Shipping. Log shipping is the implementation of an automated system to back up the transaction log files on a primary database server and then restoring them onto a standby server. A transaction log is a history of actions executed by a database management system used to guarantee that updates that have not yet been committed are saved even in the face of an improper shutdown. Alerting. Usually they are created by implementing a query that searches for events of a certain type and then sets an alert when it finds this. If in Event Viewer, this is done by attaching a task to the log. Reporting. In some cases, you want to create a report based off the log data you have collected, perhaps to make a presentation to upper management. While there are third-party tools for this, you can also simply pipe the results to a properly formatted table displaying the information you need. Retention or rotation. As you learned earlier, you can control the retention period and the action to be taken when the log is full. Data migration and transfer. Moving data around from digital location to a location can be called either a migration or a transfer. In this section, you'll learn some concepts and considerations related to moving data around. Infiltration or exfiltration. These two terms are used to describe the direction of the data transfer with respect to your organizational network. Data infiltration is when data enters your network. Exfiltration is when data exits your network. For example, a malicious infiltration is when malware gets in the network, whereas malicious exfiltration is when sensitive data exits the network. Load balancer. A load balancer evenly distributes incoming traffic among web servers that are defined in a load balance set. Figure shows how a load balancer works. As shown, users connect to the public IP of the load balancer directly. With this setup, Chapter 1: Introduction. Data Analytic Thinking. Dream no small dreams, for they have no power to move the hearts of men. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. The past 15 years have seen extensive investments in business infrastructure, which have improved the ability to collect data throughout the enterprise. Virtually every aspect of business is now open to data collection and often even instrumented for data collection. Operations, manufacturing, supply chain management, customer behavior, marketing campaign, performance, workflow procedures, and so on. At the same time, information is now widely available on external events such as market trends, industry news, and competitors' movements. This broad availability of data has led to increasing interest in methods for extracting useful information and knowledge from data, the realm of data science. The ubiquity of data opportunities. With vast amounts of data now available, companies in almost every industry are focused on exploiting data for competitive advantage. In the past, firms could employ teams of statisticians, modelers, and analysts to explore datasets manually, but the volume and variety of data have far outstripped the capacity of manual analysis. At the same time, computers have become far more powerful, networking has become ubiquitous, and algorithms have been developed that connect datasets to enable broader and deeper analysis than previously possible. The convergence of this phenomena has given rise to the increasingly widespread business application of data science principles and data mining techniques. Probably the widest applications of data mining techniques are in marketing for tasks such as targeted marketing, online advertising, and recommendations for cross-selling. Data mining is used for general customer relationships management to analyze customer behavior in order to manage attrition and maximize expected customer value. The finance industry uses data mining for credit scoring and trading, and in operations via fraud detection and workforce management. Major retailers from Walmart to Amazon apply data mining throughout their businesses, from marketing to supply chain management. Many firms have differentiated themselves strategically with data science, sometimes to the point of evolving into data mining companies. The primary goal of this book are to help you view business problems from a data perspective and understand principles of extracting useful knowledge from data. There is a fundamental structure to data analytic thinking and basic principles that should be understood. There are also particular areas where intuition, creativity, common sense, and domain knowledge must be brought to bear. A data perspective will provide you with structure and principles, and this will give you a framework to systematically analyze such problems. As you get better at data analytic thinking, you will develop intuition as to how and where to apply creativity and domain knowledge. Throughout the first two chapters of this book, we will discuss in detail various topics and techniques related to data science and data mining. The terms data science and data mining often are used interchangeably, and the former has taken a life of its own as various individuals and organizations try to capitalize on the current hype surrounding it. At a high level, data science is a set of fundamental principles that guide the extraction of knowledge from data. Data mining is the extraction of knowledge from data via technologies that incorporate these principles. As a term, data science often is applied more broadly than the traditional use of data mining. But data mining techniques provide some of the clearest illustrations of the principles of data science. Note, it is important to understand data science even if you never intend to apply it yourself. Data analytic thinking enables you to evaluate proposals for data mining projects. For example, if an employee, a consultant, or a potential investment target proposes to improve a particular business application by extracting knowledge from data, you should be able to assess the proposal systematically and decide whether it is sound or flawed. Maintaining and optimizing operating systems. In this chapter, you will learn how to perform operating system maintenance tasks, optimize operating systems, prepare for problems. Every computer running a modern operating system (OS) requires both occasional optimization to keep the system running, snappily, and ongoing maintenance to make sure nothing goes wrong. Microsoft, Apple, and the many Linux developers use decades of experience with operating systems to search for ways to make the task of maintaining and optimizing surprisingly easy and very automatic, but there's still plenty to do to keep things humming along. This chapter covers maintenance and optimization, so let's make sure you know what these two terms means. Maintenance means jobs you do from time to time to keep the OS running well, such as running mass storage shared utilities. CompTIA sees optimizations as change you make to a system to make it better. A good example is adding RAM. This chapter covers the standard maintenance and optimization activities performed on Windows, Mac OS, and Linux, and the tools techs use to perform them. Even the best maintained, most perfectly optimized computer is going to run into trouble. Hard drives crash, naive coworkers delete files, and those super great new video card drives sometimes fail. The secret isn't to try to avoid trouble, because trouble will find you, but rather to make sure you're ready to deal with problems when they arise. This is one area that very few users do well, and it's our job as techs to make recovery from trouble as painless as possible. OS developers gives us plenty of tools to prepare for problems. We just need to make sure we use them. This chapter covers maintenance and optimization techniques for all the operating systems currently on the CompTIA Plus exam. But like the exams and the reality of Microshare, Windows features a lot more than Mac OS or Linux. Maintaining operating systems. Operating systems need patching. Mass storage devices must be kept organized and running well. Registers and temporary files need the occasional cleaning. In the past, many of these jobs were handled manually. Today, Operating systems handle many, if not most, of these jobs automatically. This section looks at the most common maintenance job techs do on systems. It finishes with a discussion on making customized tools for maintaining Windows. Patch management. There's no such thing as perfect operating system. First, all operating system makes come up with new or improved features. Second, bad actors discover weakness and generate malware to take advantage of those weaknesses. The process of keeping software updated in a safe and timely fashion is known as patch management. From the moment Microsoft releases a new version of Windows, malware attacks, code errors, new hardware, new features, and many other issues compel Microsoft to provide updates, known more generically as patches, to the operating system. Patch management isn't only for Windows. Both Mac OS and Linux require patch management, and I'll cover those needs as well. Windows Patch Management. Microsoft's primary distribution tool for handling patch management is a setting tool or control panel, Apple called Windows Update. In its 2-decade plus history, Windows Update has gone through many iterations. Fortunately, CompTIA cares only that you know how it works on Windows 7 and newer. In Windows 7, Windows Update separates fixes into distinct types: updates and service packs. Updates in Windows 7 are individual fixes that come out fairly often. On the other order of once a week or so, individual updates are usually fairly small, rarely more than a few megabytes. A service pack is a large bundle of updates, plus anything else Microsoft might choose to add. Service packs are invariably large, hundreds of megabytes, and are often packaged with Windows, as shown in figure 14. 1. With Windows 8, Microsoft ditched the service pack terminology and used only updates to indicate changes. Microsoft did release one big update that could be construed as a service pack, called 8.1. It was only available through the new app store that was added in Windows 8. Ace does not know how to analyze the quality of the call because he doesn't have any experience in qualifying calls, so it's making the life of everybody around him difficult. Ace jobs is inferior than customer service jobs because it's better to be in a voice than non-voice career during a recession if you are a Filipino, because not every adult are lucky to have rich families that will allow them to learn English during elementary grade. The problem of not having a voice customer service job is the mastery of English because you are not speaking to a real customer, and to keep a language alive, you have to read and speak it frequently. No matter how intelligent a person, his memory is limited, be it for facts, figures, or language. It is the reason it's hard to shift career in after your mid-20s. Kristen Jude Sosa will have a better life than me because she has a higher pay and became conscientious on her previous jobs. Mami Bang Bataclan is still better than Kristen Jude because stars from a company quickly becomes mid-years when they transfer to inferior company because their earlier excellence appears to have depended heavily on their former firm's general and proprietary resources, organizational cultures, timing, etc. We're all just dependent on systems. Here is the list of non-portable or transferable human capital. Knowledge and skills gained from in-house training programs and on-the-job experience that have no value outside the firm. Firms supporting capabilities and reputation, routines and procedures, teammates and managers. These people often are totally unaware of the enormous support system they had going for them in the excellent company, and at the very least, initially lost and bewildered without it. The culture at the University of Chicago is very different from the culture of competitors like Stanford or Harvard. If I were to leave Chicago, I would lose that knowledge and I would have to acquire something comparable at another university. These differences can be found in pretty much all companies now, and the distinction also applies to particular technologies and the knowledge required to apply them. If you leave that company, that knowledge becomes obsolete. More on-the-job experience increases the firm's specificity of worker skills, which in turn increases productivity. In well-oiled and familiar networks, substantive interactions simply take less of busy analysts time than do new relationships that need to be built from scratch. The investigators emphasize the transferability of such knowledge and its link to job tenure, and studies of many occupations have confirmed the decisive importance of accumulated firm-specific human capital. One such study attributed workplace success to superior ability to leverage intra-firm resources strategically. The top performing knowledge workers were those who figure out how to make the most of the intra-firm networks and other capabilities available to them. Many stores readily acknowledge that working with first-rate colleagues sparks ideas and stimulates productivity. Colleagues and teammates foster each other's success by sharing resources, coaching, encouraging, and serving as role models. Access to a capable colleague who covers a closely related sector matters most. Thus, analysts of team-oriented departments drew liberally on each other's expertise and knowledge. Business is becoming and more interrelated, explains Steve Bullock. If you're a great oil analyst, you really want to be working with other great oil and gas analysts. It makes your research so much better. Greg Nedgemer, a star analyst at Lehman Brothers, confirmed the value of knowledge sharing in sector teams. We would get together in industry sectors to have breakfast and discuss forces affecting our industries and try to draw inferences about larger trends where some commonalities seem to exist. In every workplace, even the most entrepreneurial and individualistic people gather information and get work done by means of informal networks. The embeddedness and interconnectedness that characterize even analyst jobs strongly suggest that there is likely to be no such thing as a pure free agent within an organization. The evidence that the quality of the working environment is a strong predictor of performance, in combination with evidence that stars from better firms depend more heavily on their firm's capabilities than do their counterparts at weaker firms, goes a long way toward explaining why stars who move to weaker, less research firms underperformed for so long. I confess that we don't have a reliable absolute measure for performance for every job, and we don't force a distribution of ratings because different teams perform at different levels. Because firms that operated according to this hands-off philosophy did not make a point of customizing the resources they offered their analysts. The analyst skill sets tended to remain generalized, fluid, and mobile, as well as less idiosyncratically firm-specific than at more team-oriented companies. By contrast, Analysts will have Bear Stearns, Goldman Sachs, and Merrill Lynch were considerably worse off after moving. At these firms, the star analyst and the firm were in essence a team, and the post-move usefulness of firm-specific human capital eroded performance. In exploring the reasons for women's portable performance, we found that female analysts deliberately and strategically cultivated portable, example external relationships, resources, and sources of information, and also thought more strategically about the repercussions of moving than their male counterparts. Individuals who are stars in the workplace have a strong, persistent, and potentially career-damaging tendency to undervalue the importance to their success of their employers' capabilities and resources, and their own practice ability to make use of these resources. For individuals who intend to stay put at their current employers, coming to grips with this central truth may be little more than a character building exercise in modesty and in giving credit where credit is due. Whether contemplating an imminent move or one in the indeterminate future, these individuals should try to undertake a dispassionate and systematic assessment of the drivers of their past performance before taking any other steps. And they should carefully weigh an increase in compensation, which is likely to be their prime motivation for changing jobs, against the probability of a future performance decline and a possibly a precipitous and long-term one. This is what David Ray meant when he said, when you work in a company, they are teaching you. So when you observe and learn all this stuff, give it 3 to 5 years. When you start your own thing, the skills that you've attained would allow you to reach $1 million in a single year. Evaluate what you can do, not the title they've given you. We owe our learnings and achievements to our families, high school batchmates, college friends, and co-workers, so be thankful to them. Companies' biggest separator is their experience, which can take decades for an employee to get on his own. People who did not demonstrate conscientiousness in their resume will have a bad domino effect on their future job prospects because their new manager will rate him poorly than his counterparts because manager knows that brain without loyalty is not a reliable source of sustained competitive advantage. It is worth reiterating that moving to a firm likely to offer fewer resources and less accomplished colleagues is apt to have a debilitating effect on performance, no matter how talented one is or how hard one works. Underperforming firms seek out stars in an attempt to quickly reverse their fortunes. In addition, the much publicized outside hour can cause resentment in the department with accompanying breakdown in morale, teamwork, and communication. Unsurprisingly, the most active seekers of star analysts were firm unsuccessful at developing their own talent or less interested in doing so than in pursuing short-term performance. In their eagerness to begin reaping the benefits of the newly hard rainmaker, many firms entirely overlook his or her need to learn the ropes during a ramp-up period. A new person cannot simply arrive, read the files, and get to work. I am working to achieve my performance goals like AHT, including callback, call, and after call work, QA, compliance, and attendance. She discovered that the company scoreboard was irrelevant. These reps were scoring tens on an individual scoreboard. You cannot concentrate on 34 metrics at a time. Customers' expectations, customers has thousands of questions, and they are Being bounced around and anticipating customers' expectations is essential to developing effective services. Customers' expectation changes over time, but it's always based on design expectations. Be accessible. 88% of consumers were less likely to buy from a company that didn't answer support requests on social media. And for customers who took to social media to voice their concerns about a product they had purchased, 45% said that they'd be mad if they received no response, and 27% said that they would completely stop doing business with that company. Treat me courteously. While courteously used to refer primarily to the way agents interact with customers, the definition today is much more ingrained in systems and processes. Don't make customers repeat the same information or re-explain the background of an existing service issue. Don't transfer them around or place them on hold for too long. And put your contact information where customers can easily find it. Sure, it's as important as ever that your agents are courteous, but there's a lot more to it. Don't let me repeat my account history. Customers are reacting to being ignored as much as they are to being wrong. Be responsive to what I need and want. Definitions of responsiveness and promptness are also evolving. As one example, email response times have gotten far better in recent years, from several days to a matter of hours in many organizations. In fact, some organizations are staffing for email like they do calls or chat and handling them as they arrive. Similarly, more organizations all the time are handling time-sensitive social media interactions as they occur. Do what needs to be done promptly or faster. 82% of customers see fast resolution as an excellent customer service because we have limited time. The most efficient contact is one that never happened at all. People realize how valuable their time than money because they see their close friends die. Provide well-trained and informed employees. Another customer expectation is that organization will stop the contact center with well-trained and knowledgeable agents. As a rule, contact centers are handling more complex issues through more channels and from customers that come from increasingly diverse backgrounds. Robust self-service capabilities are handling a deeper range of issues, leaving your employees with the most complex interactions. Successful contact centers are rethinking and upgrading recruiting and hiring practices. The training they provide to agents and managers, and the tools and processes they put in place. Tell me what to expect. Set expectation in the beginning that our processes change, and they may be advised to go to the nearest store. I'll be providing you how I'll be providing you information on how you can unlock your iPhones. Provide expectation in our website. Remind them that the leverage is not in the representative, it's in the contact center processes. Systems and business analyst. Customers don't know, nor should they care, that these guidelines require processes, so it's important to remind it to them. If other departments are not trained on how fraud prevention processes works due to security concern and to avoid fraudster, they are bound to provide misinformation to customers and fraudsters. It's the problem of setting expectation. It's systems problem because we should not tell to customer service how fraud prevention works because it's constantly changing based on fraudster behavior. Meet your commitments and keep your promises. The first strategy is to make fewer and better commitments to customers. The best approach is to treat every words, sentences, and paragraphs with or even an employee as a legally binding contract because on a societal level, that's what it is. Do not false advertise your products and services because customer has the right to ask for refunds and credits. Fraud analysts are there to avoid excessive refunds, credits, frauds, scam, etc. They are there to reinforce companies' policies and process. Next, a company that isn't tracking its commitments, for example, through support system, software, or by noting promises from leadership, can easily forget what the original promise was. Finally, having actual processes in place to meet these commitments is required. Assuming that such processes won't be relevant until sometime in the future will only lead to broken promises. Do it right the first time. We are in the customer's perceptions business. Follow up, call back, it's connected to making fewer and better commitments. I won't promise I will change your SIM card, but I will explain clearly how you can get over this hurdle by showing you other options. Explaining the reason behind our process and showing that a fraud prevention employee is just an employee and part of the bigger systems. Be socially responsible and ethical. Don't hack laptop of people who wants to repair it and volunteer and donate to charity to make the world sustainable place. What is quality contact? The most efficient contact is one that never happened at all. A. Customer can access the contact channels desired. It is connected to being accessible. B. Contact is necessary in the first place. It is part of telling what to expect to the customer because we can avoid this by removing the option to call our department if their needs does not match our expertise. Customers not placed in queue for too long. 82% of customers wants fast resolution. All of us do when we are reminded that our time is limited. We all work in a world of limited time and resources. It is connected to doing things that needs to be done promptly. Customers not transfer around. One transfer if you can. It is connected to telling what to expect to customers and doing things promptly. Customers doesn't get rushed. Our tone of voice says a lot about our confidence in the call. It is connected to doing what is right the first time. Agent provides correct response. Customer service responses book helps you to achieve this. It is connected to telling what to expect to the customer. Customer receives correct information. It is connected to doing what needs to be done promptly. Agent captures all needed or useful information. It is connected to doing it right the first time. Customer has confidence contact was effective. It is connected to doing it right the first time. Customer doesn't feel it necessary to check up, verify, or repeat. People need to be reminded about the product knowledge and that customer wants fast resolution more than they need to be instructed. Spaced repetition and understanding the human condition and how our brain learns is the key. It is connected to doing it right the first time. Summarizing in the end is part of preparing for worst case scenario, and it's a form of hacking in pursuit of knowledge. Processes and systems constantly change, so it's important to constantly upgrade your product knowledge. Sometimes, the process does not make sense because it is created with the assumption that it will good for most and bad for few, because that's how the nature works. Hard contact stems from rare people who's unlucky enough to be disfavored by the system. Recession forces us all to be specialized and to do more with less, dramatically improve our services and product with less pay. Most of the times, agent and the customer are confused on a specific. How hard drives work? Hard drives come in two major types: the traditional type with moving parts, and a newer, more expensive technology with no moving parts. Let's look at both. Magnetic hard drives. A traditional hard disk drive (HDD) is composed of individual disks or platters with read or write heads on actual actuator for arms controlled by a servo motor, all contained in a sealed case that prevents contamination by outside air. Figure 8.1: an enclosed HDD top and an open HDD bottom. The aluminum platters are coated with a magnetic medium. Two tiny read or write heads service each platter, one to read the top of the platter and the other to read the bottom of the platter. See Figure 8.2. Each head has a bit-sized transducer to read or write to each spot on the drive. Many folks refer to traditional HDDs as magnetic hard drives. Rotational drives are sometimes platter-based hard drives. Figure 8.2. Read or write heads on actuator arms. Spindle or rotational speed. Hard drives run at a set spindle speed, with spinning platters measured in revolutions per minute (RPM). Older drives run at a speed of 3,600 RPM, and drives are sold with speeds up to 15,000 RPM. The faster the spindle speed, the faster the drive stores and retrieves data. By far the most common speeds are 5,400 and 7,200 RPM. Higher performance, which are also far less common, run at 10,000 and 15,000 RPM. Faster drives generally equate to better performance, but they also generate more noise and heat. Excess heat cuts the life of hard drives dramatically. A rise of 5 degrees Celsius may reduce the life expectancy of a hard drive by as much as 2 years. So even if replacing an old pair of 5,400 RPM drives with a shiny new pair of 15,000 RPM drives doesn't generate enough heat to crush the entire system, it may severely put your storage investment at risk of a short life cycle. You can deal with the warmth of these very fast drives by adding drive-by fans between the drives or migrating to a more spacious case. Most enthusiasts end up doing both. Drive-by fans sit at the front of a bay and blow their air across the drive. They range in price from $10 to $100 and can lower the temperature of your drives dramatically. Some cases come with a bay fan built in. Airflow in a case can make or break your system's stability, especially when you add new drives that increase the ambient temperature. Hot systems get flaky and lock up at odd moments. Many things can impede the airflow: jumbled up ribbon cables used by old storage systems, USB headers and other attachments, drives squished together in a tiny case, fans plugged by dust or animal hair, and so on. Technicians need to be aware of the dangers when adding a new hard drive to an older system. Get into the habit of tying off non-aerodynamic cables, adding front fans to cases when systems lock up intermittently, and making sure any fans runs well. Finally, if a client wants a new drive for a system in a tiny mini tower with only the power supply fan to cool it off, Be gentle, but definitely steer the client to one of the slower drives. Form factors. Magnetic hard drives are manufactured in two standardized form factors, 2.5-inch and 3.5-inch. See Figure 8.4. A desktop system can use either form factor size. Most laptops use the 2.5-inch from form factor. 2.5-inch drive stack on top of 3.5-inch drive. The form factor only defines size. The connections and storage technology inside these drives can vary. Solid-state drives. Booting up a computer takes time. Paulo Pingal, Diego, Angelo Stone, and so on is not the most talented call center agent. It's just that happens that they entered the right job at the right time during economic growth of BPO that allows them to seize that experience and opportunity in the first place. It's the same as you. It's the policies that allow you to gain the communication and fraud analyst skill in a very short period of time. It's unlike telco companies because they have 3 months of training. Helping others to have a better results than their competitors is a vague understanding of teaching. You cannot teach what you don't know. You have to be the leader first, or you have to walk the talk, and then, if you are 10 and they are 1, you want to teach them how to become 2, step by step, until they become 9. Once they become 9, you should become 10 or more since you were able to teach them properly. There should be a distance between you and the trainee because they'll not be motivated to learn to you if you did not grow, and you should not be teaching what you don't know in the first place. Teaching the customer is different. You have to personalize your message, and sometimes the solution is not what they want. Sometimes they just want you to connect with them because it's super lonely in their area and they are baited by the internet to keep using it. You have to recognize sometimes that every customer situation is unique, and you have to realize sometimes that every customer situations has its similar and all of those things interconnects. Also, there's a pandemic and that affects their service. You have to recognize that America is moving backwards, but not like Philippines because America and PH is interconnected. Poor countries will suffer way more than rich countries, and 90% of deaths from COVID is cause of other illness and economic crisis. They also don't need to learn from you if they have the same level as you do. Thinking that it's customer service goal to solve customer problems is old ways of thinking. If your product is good, your customer should not contact you because the product should speak for itself. Also, it's the customer responsibility to know how business works. If they want cheaper price, they should focus on products that doesn't have to pay for customer service or on things that they can do to create the resources that they need to be able to solve their root problems. Remember that Amazon has a good product, so they don't even need to have a great customer service because the product itself will allow the amazing experience. You have to research and know more your customer. You have to know why they buy. Money doesn't solve everything. Right mindset will help you solve everything. If it happens that the customer doesn't know that, it's more productive to make them realize that and teach them what you know or all your lies and truth that makes you successful today. Sometimes you have to give all in teaching customer. Also, to solve problems, you know their goals and truths. To know their truths, you need to realize that people change and things does not change. It's about how we look at the experience that matters. Also, in order for them to not call customer service, the product or people should not be suck, which makes calling the customer service unnecessary. Sometimes you have to teach them. Just because Alex Becker speculates that Napoleon Hill did not meet the wealthiest people before doesn't mean that is true. Also, you did not believe to Napoleon Hill alone. You believe in his principles and all different unbiased sources, since you discover lies and truth every day in Edward de Bono. Also, you've mostly relied to your experience before that makes this belief still your to your goals. You also did consider your experience when you discover St. Owen's scientific way of looking at things. It's all about the experiments. Does Alex Becker is true because he is a credible person? Or you're close to lie and close to truth today is true because it works based on your experience? Of course, close to truth and close to lie is true because it works based on your goals. Although the close to truth and close to lie will be changed in the future, the close to lie and close to truth in every moment is different for us. Sure, that close to truth before is not useful today, but it leads you to where you are today and it lets your mind to be adaptable to change since you're always pushing new truths in your life. The most adaptable technical skills is harder to learn because you can easily practice communication skill at home. Communication skills are often considered harder to learn than programming language or technical skills for several reasons. Complexity. Communication skills are more complex than technical skills because they involve not only the conveyance of information but also the interpretation of tone, context, and body language. Effective communication requires the ability to tailor messages to different audiences and situations. Personalization. Communication skills are also more personalized than technical skills, as they involve individual style, personality, and interpersonal dynamics. Learning effective communication requires self awareness and the ability to adapt to different communication styles. Practice. Unlike technical skills, which can be learned through formal education and training, communication skills require extensive practice and feedback. Effective communication is often learned through trial and error, and individuals must be willing to seek and incorporate feedback to improve their skills. Subjectivity. Communication skills are also more subjective than technical skills, as they are influenced by factors such as culture, gender, and personal biases. Learning effective communication requires an understanding of these factors and the ability to navigate them in different contexts. I should strive for excellence in everything I do. The truth is, striving for excellence often leads to pursuing perfection that leads to no improvement at all. Perfection is the enemy of good. I should stay in my company until I found better choices because jumping companies tends to have debilitating and negative effect for people. I should stay in my company until I found a reliable way to make money other ways, but without change, there's no growth or success. My colleagues, customers, and employer are judging me based on how my colleagues see me because 360 feedback is the most important in an organization dependent on systems and collaboration. It may be true that 360 feedback is the most important in an organization dependent on systems, but a lot of your performance review from your colleagues, customers, and employers is the degree of your independence and ability to be self-starter because we cannot leverage time. It only scales linearly. Communication skills is a valuable skill because that is the single skill that prevents people from moving up the career ladder. The truth is, most careers progress fairly linearly. Even customer service and sales who has a high degree of communication skills at work. You have to take time to find those careers. It's worth a lot of effort to find them and create them. You don't want to be in a career where people who have been doing it for 2 years can be as effective as people who have been doing it for 20. Your rate of learning should always be high. Most people get bogged down in linear opportunities. Be willing to let small opportunities go to focus on potential step changes. The biggest competitive advantage in business, either for a company or for an individual's career, is long term thinking with a broad view of how different systems in the world are going to come together. One of the notable aspects of compound growth is that the furthest out years are the most important. In a world where almost no one takes a truly long term view, the market richly rewards those who do. Trust the exponential, be patient, and be pleasantly surprised. I should apply as SME because the chemical engineer who transition to tech highlights his management career that makes him get the job. A lot of advice in groups or from other people is misleading, so you have to filter out what's useful to you. Take advice with great caution. World is going through recession and it forces us all to specialize to be more efficient. One of the rules of success is to be hard to compete with. If what you can do can be done by someone else, it eventually will be and for less money. This is true for companies and individuals as well. The ubiquity of data opportunities. With vast amounts of data now available, companies in almost every industry are focused on exploiting data for competitive advantage. In the past, firms could employ teams of statisticians, modelers, and analysts to explore datasets manually. But the volume and variety of data have far outstripped the capacity of manual analysis. At the same time, computers have become far more powerful, networking has become ubiquitous, and algorithms have been developed that connect datasets to enable broader and deeper analysis than previously possible. The convergence of this phenomena has given rise to the increasingly widespread business application of data science principles and data mining techniques. Probably the widest applications of data mining techniques are in marketing for tasks such as targeted marketing, online advertising, and recommendation for cross-selling. Data mining is used for general customer relationship management to analyze customer behavior in order to manage attrition and maximize expected customer value. The finance industry uses data mining for credit scoring and trading, and in operations via fraud detection and workforce management. Major retailers from Walmart to Amazon apply data mining throughout their businesses, from marketing to supply chain management. Many firms have differentiated themselves strategically with data science, sometimes to the point of evolving into data mining companies. The primary goal of this book are to help you view business problems from a data perspective and understand principles of extracting useful knowledge from data. There is a fundamental structure to data analytic thinking and basic principles that should be understood. There are also particular areas where intuition, creativity, common sense, and domain knowledge must be brought to bear. A data perspective will provide you with structure and principles, and this will give you a framework to systematically analyze such problems. As you get better at data analytic thinking, you will develop intuition as to how and where to apply creativity and domain knowledge. Throughout the first two chapters of this book, we will discuss in detail various topics and techniques related to data science and data mining. The terms data science and data mining often are used interchangeably, and the former has taken a life of its own as various individuals and organizations try to capitalize on the current hype surrounding it. At a high level, data science is a set of fundamental principles that guide the extraction of knowledge from data. Data mining is the extraction of knowledge from data via technologies that incorporate these principles. As a term, data science often is applied more broadly than traditional use of data mining, but data mining techniques provide some of the clearest illustrations of the principles of data science. Note: it is important to understand data science even if you never intend to apply it yourself. Data analytic thinking enables you to evaluate proposals for data mining projects. For example, if an employee, a consultant, or a potential investment target proposes to improve a particular business application by extracting knowledge from data, you should be able to assess the proposal systematically and decide whether it is sound or flawed. This does not mean that you will be able to tell whether it will actually succeed for data mining projects. That often requires trying, but you should be able to spot obvious flaws, unrealistic assumptions, and missing pieces. Throughout the book, we will describe a number of fundamental data science principles, and will illustrate each with at least one data mining technique that embodies the principle. For each principle, there are usually many specific techniques that embody it. So in this book, we have chosen to emphasize the basic principles in preference to specific techniques. That said, we will not make a big deal about the difference between data science and data mining, except where it will have a substantial effect on an understanding the actual concepts. Let's examine two brief case studies of analyzing data to extract predictive patterns. I am working to achieve my performance goals like AHT, including callback, hold, and after call work, QA, compliance, and attendance. I am working to meet Norja clients, colleagues, and customers' needs. Does my service or product work the way Norja, colleagues, and Bell customer needs and expects, considering its competitor and our company's strategic priorities? A. Your product, service, or experience is the real game. It's helpful to remember this. Then customers' expectation is what customers seems to buy the most. Reinforce key behaviors again and again. Letter C. A standard far more rigid than their scorecard measured. Letter D. Better experience, better customer service, better product, better care, better world. Letter E. Keyword is expect because there can always be manipulation between buyer and seller. That's why you should also mention that you are from fraud preventions to set clear expectations. That's 90% of problem of managers. Expect because hacking is the pursuit of knowledge, and if you don't know the fundamental of the seller and buyer in the business you're at, you are fucked. When your employer or employees scam you, you'll be counting at loss. Reinforce this expectation thing when speaking to customer. Letter B, small letter B, serving customer and understanding their evolving needs. Small letter B.1, great vision comes from others. Small letter B.2, it's important to become the person that everybody's happy to be around because our vision in the world is to become preoccupied of the needs and wants of others. Small letter B.3, help people achieve their goals and they will help you achieve yours. Letter F, we're all in the business of customers' perception, whether we recognize it or not. Number 2, are they able to do what they expect when they use my service? Key point, customers expect you to innovate your services over time. Letter E, was the problem solved? What is the better ways to solve the problem moving forward? What new tools can we use or eliminate to make the process better? Did you resolve customer concern without asking for support? Small letter A. You have to fight to have better process because that's part of exceeding expectation and a part of your job of making a courageous culture as a frontliner. Small letter 8.1. You should continue to escalate and provide feedback to TL and persuade her using winning role strategies because it's part of the job. Small letter 8.1.2. It's part of the job to screenshot your evidence, ask support from your colleagues, etc. Small letter 8.1.3. We need to care enough to tell one another the truth, and we don't always do that. You have to remember that no one wins in court. We need to care enough to speak the truth because that's how we encourage clarity. But you do have stories that matter, and your team needs to hear them. Most people doesn't feel providing feedback. It makes it more complicated because feedback only matters when it leads to change. You don't have to know everything at this point, but to get started, you will need clarity about what your values look like in practice, why they're important, the most important strategic priorities, and what your people can do next. Did you pass AHT or client expectations? Did you read enough lawyer books? Can they get their issues resolved to their satisfaction? How long they have to wait? Waiting lets them to maximize the call and get everything that they need from the agent. That leads to higher AHT. That leads to higher wait times. It has spiral effect. Do they feel good about it? Use your tonality and strengths in individualization to make your customer, colleagues, or your client feel good and be the guy that everybody's happy to be around. Your customer and care department doesn't care about your internal metrics. Does it help them? Your team exists to tell what to expect because all companies is in the customer's perception or expectation business. What you do for your client and customers, that's what matters. Three key behaviors that drive success because tracking results isn't the same as improving them. To make improvements, you have to work on the factors that cause these outputs to be where they are. Spend time on things you can control. Don't worry on things that you can't. Be patient and focus on doing good things. I can change my company to JP Morgan because I am the most qualified people to take their calls due to my experience in financial technology and telecommunications. The truth is, changing companies is time consuming even for stars in the same industry with the same clients because it's hard to learn new things after your mid 20s and talent is overrated. We are largely dependent on things that we own that compounds over time. To afford that standard of living we are privileged to experience today. Society has been built by our ancestors. It's important to specialize because at the very least, companies will be willing to take risks on people who have spent a long focused practice and thus compound learning that will boost intelligence on the job. A smart, talented engineer may be a unique resource, but unless he or she is deeply embedded and loyal, the attractiveness of his or her talents makes that engineer an unreliable source of sustainable competitive advantage. Software engineers is complex because software is more complex than hardware. The truth is, it's true that software is more complex than hardware, but it doesn't recognize the fact that taking Magic Mushroom helps you understand consciousness, which helps you to better understand codes. Because, as Stephen Hawking said, consciousness is essentially a computer program, and our brain is the computer hardware. Whether you want to uncover the secrets of the universe or you just want to pursue a career in the 21st century, basic computer programming is an essential skill to learn. I should pause to reinforce the tone of my message to my audience. The truth is, I should pause especially in the beginning of my opening spiel to Bell customers, because that's how I can better show them that I don't rush the conversation. I'm taking the time to listen to their concerns and solve the problem first before worrying about the time, because in other call centers, they value first call resolution more than average handling time. The best way to do my job as a fraud prevention specialist is to set proper expectations. The best way to do my job as a fraud prevention specialist is to prepare for worst situation I could imagine, to be confident in every call. That's the importance of close to lies and truth journal. Ultimate goal is to create a win-win situations for both parties, so explaining how system works makes us understand that this is not under their control. The secret to customer service can be boiled down to managing customers' expectations. The truth is, the secret to customer service can be boiled down to managing customers' expectations, but it's interconnected to checking their account history, because it's important to take a moment to live where your customers lives, because that is highly correlated to managing people's expectations. Remember, the secret to your communication is knowing your audience. I am professional scammer because I am constantly look out on the new big companies that I can hack. The truth is, fraud analysts will always be in demand even in Mars, because there's a Bible and God knows that people can act inappropriately without proper systems and laws, because we're all just dependent on systems around us. It's hard to learn Python because I didn't choose computer science degree in college. When I was college, it's hard to learn Python because it's hard to remember technical concepts even in electrical engineering, like electrical circuits, because you don't use it often. No child, however intelligent, has unlimited data storage capacity. The memory space is finite, be it for words or facts or figures. And the more one learns dialect words, the less space there is for Mandarin words, or English words, or multiplications table, or formulas in mathematics, physics, or chemistry. Setting a deadline and doing a Pomodoro session while reading and listening to music is necessary because humans are wired to be complacent. Deadlines is more important if you're working full time, because your time is very limited. We are dependent on systems, but we are also different and requires different kind of learning paths. It's true that no one knows how to really quantify human performance and we are just dependent on systems, but we didn't consider that we are all weird and different. Reading might be the best way for us to learn because our genes is prone to stress and high blood pressure. I should make sure to read the easy concepts that I can apply while I don't understand the concepts I want to understand to make progress, because it's like moving on to a next data structure problem to make way for us to think deeply of the concept on the back of our head. Don't let your ego tell you that you can understand everything on your first try. The biggest hindrance to our learning is our overconfidence of our abilities. Reading the theory is as important as reading and understanding actual programs. You can start learning Python as an alternative to JavaScript to get your foot in the door. Starting is the hardest part. Over time, complexity accumulates and it becomes harder and harder for programmers to keep all of the relevant factors in their minds as they modify the system. This slows down development and led to bugs, which slows development even more and add to its cost. The ability to recognize complexity is crucial because it allows you to identify problems before you invest a lot of effort in them, and it allows you to make good choices among alternatives. Complexity is a system that is hard to understand and modify. People are often use the word complex to describe large, sophisticated features, but if such systems is easy to work on, then it's not complex. Complexity is more apparent to readers than writers. Your job as a developer is not just to create code that you can work with easily, but to create code that others can work on easily. I should be firm on my main point when communicating, but I also have to use pause as a way of communicating, like tone, because a pause communicates a lot and it's part of the tone and pace of your voice. The Quantrix fraud analyst is not the kind of market you expect to skyrocket. Making your words simple, emotional, and you is a big understanding of our psychology. As a human, we are not designed to resist the suffering because of our habit brain. That's why it's better to make it entertaining for the listener or reader to have less friction. Think about why you meet Kevin and didn't watch others that provide greater content but less entertaining like Patrick Boyle. It's hard to convey our thoughts, but it's a big understanding or not well communicated in terms of learning language. It's like learning English preposition. It's hard to know the preposition to use because it's a great lie. A great lie is so deceiving that you didn't even notice that it's a lie, just like in preposition. You won't notice that it's the right preposition even if you had encountered it before. The best thing to do is to do spaced repetition and look for the most deceiving lies. There's even greater deception in a never-ending manner. That's why close to truth and close to lie. Build your skills to notice that. It's also true in our economics beliefs and future predictions. There's so many deceiving lies, like increasing price of used cars is sign of inflation, but it is just a sign that people doesn't have money to buy brand new because of the crisis. That's the challenge in life, to spot the lies and truth in a never-ending manner. It's hard to make rule of three every day. It's easier if you integrate it in things you already do. It's hard to learn Python because I didn't choose computer science degree when I was college. The truth is, it's hard to learn Python because it's hard to remember technical concepts even in electrical engineering, like electrical circuits, because you don't use it often. No child, however intelligent, has unlimited data storage capacity. The memory space is finite, be it for words, for facts, or for figures. And the more one learns dialect words, the less space there is for Mandarin words, or English words, or multiplication tables, or formulas in mathematics, physics, or chemistry. It was a mistake for me to work in a call center instead of working as a software engineer because I can practice my speaking skill by reading a book and listening to my thoughts. The more frequently one uses a language, the easier it is to express one's thoughts in it. The younger one learns to speak a language, the more permanently it is remembered. Language is heard and spoken long before people learn to write and to read. I should always be clear on my writing to reinforce the most important to the reader. Clarity can be a double-edged sword. Sometimes you have to leave your gaze open for interpretation to evolve as events unfold. 2. Simplicity is in the eye of the beholder, and no one can really know our health status because it's subjective. No one knows our health status, but you should always judge clarity from the reader's point of view, not yours. Ace does not know how to quality of the call. I should stop learning Java script because it's hard for me to understand the concept. The truth is, I sure to read the easy concepts that I can apply while I don't understand the concepts I want to understand to make progress, because it's like moving on to a next data structure problem to make way for us to think deeply of the concept on the back of our head. Don't let your ego tell you that you can understand everything on your first try. The biggest hindrance to our learning is our overconfidence of our abilities. Reading the theory is as important as reading and understanding actual programs. Okay. In this section, we'll explore a 7-step process that you can use to write. We've probably seen lists like the one here before. There are lots of sensible ways to organize and describe the writing process. This one is distilled from my 30 years of work as a writing coach and trainer, and I think it's comprehensive. If you follow it, you'll get your writing done. Feel free to adopt it and tailor it to your own needs. As you browse through these steps, you'll see that they work together. Once you get the hang of one, you'll probably find yourself unconsciously addressing the others. For example, once you have clarity on step 1, get the ask clear, you might find that your openings automatically get stronger and more specific. Step 3. When you really think about writing for your reader, step 2, you'll choose your content in a more targeted way. Step 5. The ultimate point of this process is not to train you to follow a step-by-step process lavishly for the rest of your life, but to make you a better and faster writer. Working with the steps is a means to that end. You should feel free to use the steps any way you want. You can try working with them in numerical order, or you can browse around and pick up tips here and there. Keep Keep what's useful to you. Discard what isn't. Using the steps will help you refine your own writing process and become a stronger and more confident writer. The 7 steps to succeed in everything you write at work. 1. Get the ask clear. Make sure you know why you're writing and what you're trying to achieve. 2. Write for your reader. Focus on what your reader needs and expects, not just on what you want. Make your writing appeal to your reader. Start strong and specific. Craft an opening that makes your purpose clear and motivates your reader to keep reading. Be concise. Make your point as efficient as possible. Fill in missing content. Delete extra news content. Do a quick content check to ensure that your readers are getting what they and nothing they don't need. 6. Write in plain English. Business jargon can creep in unnoticed. Distinguish yourself by saying what you mean in plain English. If something feels wrong, fix it. If you feel like there's something wrong with what you just drafted, there probably is. Instead of just sending something you feel uncomfortable with, take a minute to figure out what's wrong and fix it. The reason of lack of improvement in their life and society is mostly because of culture. We like to think that we change our environments, but the truth is, our environment changes us. You have to be careful on where you live, what company you work, and what sets of friends do you have, because that will determine your destiny. Environment is far more important than our decisions in life. You should delegate outcomes, not process. Delegate outcomes and be clear on what success looks like. Then let your employees work on the best process. When you delegate process, people begin to subtly lose their passion for their work and find meaning elsewhere. How how will you know if your employees feel like bots? Well, first, they stop asking important questions. The why, what's next, and what if. Questions disappear, but paradoxically, they won't make a move without asking for approval. It's impossible to predict and script every scenario. Of course, the call center employee should have made an exception for the customer whose spouse had just died, but the guidebook didn't say so he stuck to the rules. If the employee never learned how to do the work, she needs training. Are you a bot? That's not what our customers want or need. They come to social media because they want some upbeat and friendly interaction. I could provide better service if we had a bit more freedom to do what we know is right. It's not just social media reps who feel this way, it happens across industries at all levels. We've met vice presidents whose fear has caused a dangerous bot like trance. Most business failures is caused by not setting clear expectations. You cannot make your expectation that customer usually needs to go to the store if you don't know the why behind those goals. It's not just important to know the what, you have to know the why. Does the product and service works based on your client and customer expectation? Setting clear expectation requires deliberate effort and continuous iteration. If you are not clear on what you want, I guarantee you will not be able to communicate it. We both work for a person who could never articulate what he wanted. He just knew it when he saw it and rarely ever seemed to see it. Just like in building great culture, it's better to identify expectation disconnects with the customer as early in the game as possible. You're kinda like a lawyer. Start with the appreciation for what people expect and receive. Recognize the good and identify the gaps or the disconnect and discuss. What if your team is skeptical? Let them taste the win. People confidence will improve and the ceiling of what they perceive as possible moves a little higher. It's not about the number of your relationships, it's the quality of your relationships that will determine our health, wealth, and happiness. High growth industry attracts high competition, which limits your returns. You should focus instead in unfamous undervalued stocks, just like choosing a job. There is always more talented people capable to lead in fraud analysts at Quantrix and especially JP Morgan. That is the reason we need to specialize. More specialization leads to harder to replicate skill sets because of the compounded knowledge that has been built over time. Specialization is what made our society prosperous. Specialization is how top earners became addicted with their job as per how money works. Specialization is a powerful way to overcome the accident of bad genetics. The more you master a specific skill, the harder it becomes for others to compete with you. Many bodybuilders are stronger than average arm wrestler, but even a massive bodybuilder may lose at arm wrestling because the arm wrestling champ has very specific strength. Even if you're not the most naturally gifted, you can often win by being the best in a very narrow category. Boiling water will soften a potato but harden an egg. You can control whether you're a potato or an egg, but you can decide to play a game where it's better to be hard or soft. If you can find a more favorable environment, you can transform the situation from one where the odds are against you to one where they are in your favor. As you've learned, communication skill is not that unique. No. An operating software that manages a computer's hardware. An operating system is a software that manages computers' hardware. It also provides the basis for application programs and acts as intermediary between the computer user and the computer hardware. An amazing aspect of operating systems is how they vary in accomplishing these tasks in a wide variety of computing environments. Operating systems are everywhere, from cars and home appliances that include Internet of Things devices to smartphones, personal computers, enterprise computers, and cloud computing environments. In order to explore the role of an operating system in a modern computing environment, it is important first to understand the organization and architecture of computer hardware. This includes the CPU, memory, and input/output devices, as well as storage. A fundamental responsibility of an operating system is to allocate these resources to programs. Because an operating system is large and complex, it must be created piece by piece. Each of these pieces should be a well delineated portion of the system with carefully defined inputs, outputs, and functions. In this chapter, we provide a general overview of the major components of a contemporary computer system, as well as the functions provided by the operating system. Additionally, we cover several topics to help set the stage for the remainder of the text. Data structures used in operating systems, computing environments, and open source and free operating systems. Describe the general organization of a computer system and the role of interrupts. Describe the components in a modern multiprocessor computer system. Illustrate the transition from user mode to kernel mode. Discuss how operating systems are used in various computing environments. Provide examples of free and open source operating systems. How to virtualize resources. One central questions we will answer in this book is quite simple. How does the operating system virtualize resources? This is the crux of our problem. Why the OS does this is not the main question, as the answer should be obvious. It makes the system easier to use. Thus, we focus on the how, what mechanisms and policies are implemented by the OS to attain virtualization. How does the OS do so efficiently? What hardware support is needed? We will use the crux of the problem and shaded boxes such as this one as a way to call out specific problems we are trying to solve in building an operating system. Thus, within a note on a particular